We will start with those new comments from House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who continues to suggest his party is close to launching an impeachment inquiry into President Biden. In an interview Monday night, McCarthy said it stems from the Republican-led investigations into the Biden family's business dealings. Here's what he said on Fox News, followed by his remarks to reporters yesterday up on Capitol Hill.
We've only followed where the information has taken us. But Hannity, this is rising to the level of impeachment inquiry, which provides Congress the strongest power to get the rest of the knowledge and information needed. Because this president has also used something we have not seen since Richard Nixon, used the weaponization of government to benefit his family and deny Congress the ability to have the oversight. I believe we will follow this all the way to the end, and this is going to rise to an impeachment inquiry the way the Constitution tells us to do this, and we have to get the answers to these questions. If you understand what impeachment inquiry is, it's not impeachment. It allows Congress to investigate by giving Congress the full power to get the information they need. It's the way people should go about investigating. So let me put yourselves in our place. It doesn't matter who's in the majority or not.
So a little tough to hear that if you're in the car listening on the radio. Speaker McCarthy yesterday saying they're not talking specifically about getting all the way to impeachment. They want to open an impeachment inquiry so they can get the evidence that allows looking into these alleged crimes that they see. So Jackie Alemany, as you cover this Congress on Capitol Hill, how serious are Republicans, and I'm not just talking about the Freedom Caucus or the Jim Jordans of the world, about impeaching the President of the United States, and how far can they actually get with this?
Yeah, Willie, I'm not exactly sure what they would be impeaching him for just yet, and I don't think Republicans know that either. Of course, there's been a slew of unverified allegations against Biden, specifically rooting from when he was vice president. You saw James Comer and Chuck Grassley sort of take a Hail Mary last week in releasing in its totality this form of a human confidential source that was relayed to the FBI several years ago that, again, alleged unverified allegations that Biden was involved in some sort of bribery scheme in relation to Ukraine. We have previously reported at the Washington Post that the FBI had looked into these allegations. They didn't check out. It was closed. That happened under Attorney General Bill Barr. So, you're going to see Republicans continuing to try to throw spaghetti at the wall here to sort of muddy the waters. But the veracity of a lot of these allegations does not yet quite match the explosiveness of a lot of the rhetoric and the claims that we're seeing. Of course, this isn't going to deter Republicans from stopping these sorts of claims, especially heading into August recess. I think there is a desire here to kind of get as much out there in order to appease former President Trump, especially as we are all waiting for this third indictment to land.
And John, Jackie makes the important point that a lot of this was raised to the FBI, to the Justice Department, under the Trump administration, under Bill Barr, under people appointed by Donald Trump. And in fact, they didn't see any wrongdoing here. But that doesn't mean that Republicans, especially this oversight committee, are not going to plow forward with this. This could cause some problems, as you saw Speaker McCarthy trying to sort of walk the line there on the question of impeachment. Will moderate Republicans be willing to step out and take an impeachment vote on the President of the United States when they need to be reelected themselves? So I'll put the question to you. How far do you think they actually can get? Could the House, anyway, be voted down in the Senate, but could the House, anyway, vote to impeach President Biden?
Yeah, we should underscore what you just did, the idea that they have not, despite the Speaker's claims, proven wrongdoing from the president. That is not the case here. First of all, the White House, of course, is pushing back strongly against all of this, saying it's just another political stunt, that the House Republicans are proving that this is what they care about rather than what actually matters to the American people. And they feel pretty confident, the White House does, that if the House were to go down this path, it would backfire on them dramatically. We should also note that a bunch of Republican senators were asked about this yesterday. Senate's in session, and were pretty dismissive. So there's another moment where the GOP in the Senate is sort of acting as the grown-ups to the impetuous children there in the Republican-controlled House. And there's also a sense that McCarthy's talking about impeachment inquiry, and that might be as far as it goes. That this is an olive branch, if you will, outreach to those far-right members of the House who do want to push Biden out of office, who want to go through with a full-fledged impeachment impeachment hearing. McCarthy, the sense is if he offers them this inquiry, maybe they'll be satisfied. That will be enough. And he doesn't have to bring this to a vote to put those, as you say, moderate Republicans in a difficult position to have to cast a ballot on it. Frankly, it's not going to pass. It'd lose in the Senate anyway, and it could really backfire for Republicans coming next fall.
Susan, you've been covering politics for quite some time, so let me ask you a question. What's the degree of difficulty for you and other people, other reporters, covering the present-day status of the Republican Party in the House of Representatives? You have Speaker McCarthy, you have a Freedom Caucus, you have people like Matt Gaetz and something called the 20. How many elements of the Republican Party are there, and how do you cover this?
Yeah, well, it's been a challenge, this new Republican Party. We used to be able to cover the leaders of the Republican Party, like Mitch McConnell, and I think that was a very serious way to cover the party. That's no longer the case. There are other factions that exercise some considerable influence. I don't know that President Biden will ever be impeached, but I feel confident that talk of impeachment will be a factor for him for the rest of his tenure in office. There was talking about covering politics for a while. When I started covering politics, impeachment and talk of impeachment was considered an incredibly momentous discussion, one of great seriousness. Now, talk of impeachment is like demanding a roll call vote on the House floor. It's become just another political tool that has undercut some of the serious impeachment inquiries we've seen, like into January 6th, and just as someone said earlier, just muddied the waters. I think Jackie said this, just muddied the waters as we consider this impending indictment of former President Trump.